4-0. It's good to be back in here after a big win on Friday. Just really proud of our players to play the kind of caliber team that Crescent was. Familiar opponent. You know, we played them in the third round, which means the winner of that game goes to play for a championship in the Upper State Championship. And I think they're just as good as they were last year. So kind of a preview for us of where we need to keep working and where we want to be. That's going to be the types of teams that we've got to beat when we get into playoff time. So it wouldn't surprise me if we don't run back into them again in the playoffs. It seems that we can't stay away from each other. And then opportunity this week for us to go to Anderson and play a team that is really, really skilled athletically. It's our last non-region opponent before we get to our bye week. You know, we talked all year. One of our goals is to try to be undefeated in our non-region schedule before we get to our bye, and then have a chance to evaluate what we've done well, get healthy, and then start the stretch run in region play. So the next few weeks for our program are really important as we start to ramp up for those really key games in our region play.
I know there were a few, I should characterize it as rough moments in the game where there was what's the word for it, rough housing going on the field.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, last week it was a high school football game. It got chippy at times. I thought our kids did a really good job of handling certain situations in the appropriate manner. We really talk about the game of football, giving them opportunities and avenues to respond in the right way. We did some of those things and harmed ourselves as far as penalties and not being locked into the details and the discipline of what we needed. The game did not start the way that we wanted it to start. You know, offensively, a couple of penalties in the first drive that really backed us up. Defensively, we don't get off to a good start. They score a touchdown. We're down 7-0. The atmosphere there was great for a high school football game with the band, the student section. They have a great home crowd, loud scoreboard. It was just a moment for us to be able to grow through some of those things. That's how it's going to be come some of the region games that we're at. And especially when you get into playoffs and you start looking at the bracket, even if we're fortunate and blessed enough to potentially win our region, it looks like at some point you're going to go on the road based on how the regions are. So to go through those experiences last week, I think is going to make us better in the long run, but was just really proud of how they responded to some of the moments of adversity, whether it was some things that happened after the whistle or in between the whistle that you would describe as dirty. I just describe it as it's football. You know, some of our kids get a little distracted by what other teams are trying to do. They want you to be flustered. They want you to respond in a negative way. They're trying to get you to get a 15-yard penalty. You see that on Saturdays at the college level. You see it on Sundays at the professional level. Elite teams and great teams handle those things very well, and we took a step forward. So I was really proud of them last week. You know, anything to add?
No, just what you said. It's just about how you respond to it. Can't get any stupid penalties or allow any yards, that they deserve trying to get at you.
And I know Jesse, if my notes are correct, had an interception and recovered a fumble.
Yeah.
How did it feel to participate like that?
It felt good. Last year I was out most of the year, so it just feels good to come back and build on what I've been just been doing.
Yeah, really proud of Jesse. Obviously, the heart and soul of our defense to have him back after his injury last year. To see him on the football field. I mean, if you watch Jesse play the game of football, you can tell that he loves it. So to see him get the interception, gave him a hard time for not scoring after he got the interception. But proud of him and what he's meant to our defense and who he is as a leader of our team. Jesse's just a phenomenal young man, and we couldn't be more excited that he's back with us and healthy-ish. Okay, yeah. He plays too hard to always be healthy. We're now into week 5, so there's not very many of our players that probably feel 100% as we get to. But Jesse is a special young man and a great football player, but an even better leader for us.
If your team could be known for one thing, what would that one be known for?
We talk about this. So at 7:30, we do a pregame schedule, and it breaks it down from minute by minute of where they're supposed to be from the time they walk into the building on a Friday to when we start playing. And at the end, at 7:30, it says to glorify Him. And really what that means is I want when people watch us play football that we're a representation of what young people should be in this world that are great people. How passionate they play, what type of teammates they are, how do they respond when things go well? When we score, is it about you? Are you celebrating, or do we see a group of people celebrating? How do you pick your teammates up? How do they hear you on the sidelines? What language are you using? What happens when you go wrong, or when things go wrong? Do they see you on the sideline pouting? Do they see you arguing with your teammates, or do you see a group of kids uplifting each other? For us to be known, I want us to be known for, I guess, everything that we go through is doing it in an elite way, not just how we play on the football field. I think that's the easy part, or at least it is for me. The easiest part of my job every week is to coach them in the game of football. I don't want that to sound arrogant by any means. It's tough. But calling a play or getting them to run the right route or be in the right spot, those are the easy things. The great part about football is the things that you go through mentally that you've got to be able to handle, that then you can make a connection to in your life down the road. So that's kind of what we preach every day, is how do you handle the details from the time you're in the school building at 7:30 to when you go home at 6:30 some nights. You can't be great on the football field if you're a terrible math student in first period, or if you're not doing the right things in the cafeteria, or when you get to leave for lunch, you and your friends go do things you're not supposed to, or you listen to music you're not supposed to. Who are you when nobody's looking is important to us.
What is your personal goals for the season?
My personal goals for the season? I'd like to lead the defense in tackles, but I think as a total defense, our whole goal is to just, I guess, not allow as many yards as possible. Is what the goal of defense is, but I want to try to hold everybody to 0.
I like it.
So what does a week of practice look like?
It depends on the week and the opponent, but we stay pretty consistent. Monday is always a heavy install day. In this class before in the press conference, what I thought was a great question is, do we do things differently based on the opponent? And the answer to that is yes. Every team that we go and play, from a scheme standpoint, they do a little bit of different things. So on Monday, it's a really heavy install day for us. We're learning different things, how to line up to formations, how to line up to this scheme. What are some of the things that we saw on film that allows us to kind of know what's coming, whether it's on the defensive side or the offensive side. So Monday we slow it down a little bit. It's more of a teach day. Tuesday is a fast day. It's fast and physical. It's a day that we should be a little bit better than we were on Monday. We get into some red zone periods on both sides of the ball. That's really important for us. I think championship games are won in the red zone. So if we're on offense, we've got to at least kick a field goal. We've got to come away with points, but we really pride ourselves on scoring. And then for the defense, championships are won with goal line stands. So we spend a lot of time in the red zone and start getting into situations. Then when we get to Wednesday, it turns into pure situational things on Wednesday. So what do we want to run from an offensive standpoint? We do a 3rd and short period. What do our kids believe in on 3rd and short? 3rd and medium, 3rd and long. Same thing for the defense. What is going to happen in the game that we've broken down based on our film study, that we think this is what the other team's going to run based on their tendencies that they have within the situations of the game. And Wednesday's a big special teams day for us. A lot of live special teams as we go. And then Thursday, a day like today, will be more of a team on air. We don't use I'm going to say it in there, they're going to charge me a quarter. We don't say this anymore. It's walk through. Our mindset has changed. We don't want to walk through anything. So it's team on air periods where we have some reminders. That's just a day we try to get our bodies back healthy. Most of the time we're just in helmets. It's to make sure that we're cleaned up and clear on the details that we have going into the week. And then here we are, before you know it, it's Friday and we're ready to go play. Good question, John.
What is your overall philosophy when it comes to coaching?
Overall philosophy is that, coaching is beyond the football field. So when I look at the responsibility of a coach, I think it's easy for all of us. We talk about this as a staff every week that we get back into the staff meetings on Sundays, is so much can get put on you of wanting to win a football game. I think that's easy to do. We're competitive. I catch myself in those moments. What can we do to win the next game? But the responsibility of coaching and the true responsibility that you have goes way beyond the game field. And that's to try to help these guys grow. We're right here, me and Jesse. I just pulled Jesse out of a study hall. So they're working right now. Instead of lifting today, we have a study hall. Can you be a better student? We had several new students at a Bible study last night. We have kids that are coming in early to get tutoring. We have ones that are volunteering as mentors to try to teach them that, one day you're not going to be judged on how many touchdowns you scored in high school football. I don't want to minimize how much they love football. I think that they really love and enjoy the success that they get to have, and I do too. That's the fun, rewarding part of the job. But, your son one day when you're 35 and he's 5 years old, he's not going to care how many touchdowns you scored. Now, he's going to care, are you a good dad? Are you building a foundation for who you need to be right now, one day down the road? Are you a good employee? Are you going to be someone that is a boss one day? Not just because you bounce back and forth, that you have goals and aspirations to be a boss one day, that you're a great husband. And those are cliche terms that you hear from a lot of coaches now, but I do think that it's important. So my overall coaching philosophy is to try to help them grow in all aspects of their life, socially, emotionally, spiritually, athletically, academically, any way that we can.
What are some of your strategies to memorize plays?
Strategies to memorize plays. On defense is a little bit different. It's not really plays, it's formations and just knowing where you have to be and what your assignment is. And so on film during the week, we watch what they like to do and what their, tendencies are. And so we just look at that, and then I just remember that in the game, remember what the tendencies are, what they're lining up in, and how we can combat it, go against it.
Yeah, defense may have a little bit more of a difficult job. I think that offensive players, they've got to memorize a lot of plays, but the defense, they have so much that gets thrown at them and a lot of new things. And we talked about this last week. Jesse can be right, but if one of his teammates beside him is in the wrong place and they don't line up the right way, they give up a touchdown. Offensively, sometimes we can mask some of that. We've scored plenty of touchdowns this year where you can turn on tape and like 3 or 4 kids didn't do what they were supposed to do. We may not have blocked one way, the right way. This wide receiver runs the wrong route. We just happen to run the concept the right way. Kid makes a play. We go and score. On defense, typically it requires all 11 people to know what you're supposed to do. So they have a really tough job, and they've done a great job this year. Defense gets better every single week. Coach Coco, he's done a phenomenal job. We've got some new players in new positions this year, new faces, some young kids at times. So it starts with the leadership of Coach Coco, but it also starts with the leadership of our seniors. Jesse and Jacoby, AJ will be back before long, and kind of those guys leading the defense.
How do you keep your team motivated and locked in each week?
Man, I think it's just to urge them to want to be the best in everything that they do. Every week that we get to go play, we want to take the next step in our program. What's the next step that we can take? And then how motivated are you to take the opportunity that you have to be better than you were last week? Today's practice, theoretically, and this is what I challenge them every day, today's practice should be the best practice in MVP history. Why? Because it's our next one. So this Friday, hopefully your motivation is it should be, from a game perspective, should be the best game that any MVP team has ever played because we were 1 week better. So you have a chance to take a step forward. It should be our best performance on offense. It should be our best performance on defense. It should be our best performance on special teams. Just that motivation of, do you want to be that person that when you're older, people will rely on? Do you come to work and they're like, man, I'm glad this guy works here because he works hard. You wake up and, you feel sick, one day, or are you going to be a good dad that day? You're still going to be a good husband that day. Just the inner drive to be the very best in what you do and how you do it, and to compete in every way. I say this all the time in here, and it's really, I wish that we could do a better job of it. We're trying to find creative ways. There's a lot of football players and athletes in here as I'm looking around, and I think, just by looking around, I've seen people compete. Lexi's over there. I talked to her the other day about competing on the court. She is fiery and passionate. I think that's very obvious as you play, but then I don't get to be around her in the classroom. My challenge to her would be like, if I watched you take a math test, right? or do I see the same? You can't demonstrate that, but I see what it's like when you don't make the right pass or you don't pick up the right position, and I see how much it bothers you. Like, so if I give you a math test and the person beside you made a 96 and you made an 84, does that bother you as bad as I watch you on the athletic field? And I think for our athletes here, that's what I want them to be. Like, I just want you to compete. I want you to be mad if you show up and you're not the first in class or you're not sitting in the front row. To learn to compete, because hopefully one day you don't want to just be the person that keeps making the same paycheck. You want the boss's paycheck. You want to be the person that gets the pay raise, and you just compete in everything that you do. So the motivation for them, I think we try to find creative ways to keep them motivated and to compete. And but that's what I want out of them. You got anything to add? How you stay motivated?
No, it's just really a day in, day out thing. Just everybody's got their own drive, and you just gotta keep it going. You know, some days are a little worse than others, but you still gotta show up and do what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
Well, going into this particular game on Friday, I know things changed a little bit this week, but is there any specific challenge you are kind of focusing on as you go into it?
Yeah, it's a very athletic team. We take pride in training our athletes the right way and to hopefully have some skill advantage to people that we play. And this week you turn on the tape and, you know, there's going to be some times where their skill is better than our skill. So now it's taking pride in being where you're supposed to be, knowing your responsibilities, executing the play that we need you to know and learn and make sure that we execute it to the highest degree. If not, you know, they can put you in a bind. So it's a great challenge for us as we get into some later games. It's also been a challenge for us to adapt. You mentioned the schedule change early in the week. You know, how do we respond again to another situation where, you know, you feel like things are out of your control? I like that we take pride in being a group that can handle it. I sent out a message on Monday. I said, we're built for this. This is what we do here. Sometimes it's not by choice. But you look over the past 2 years, the amount of times we've had to change our schedules, or we went from here to there, or what we thought should happen didn't happen. You know, I think our group really takes pride on when things don't go the right way, when a lot of people would quit or find an excuse of why you can't get it done, that we hang our hats on. Let's be the group that can overcome those things. And that parlays into your life.
And Jesse, as far as your leadership role goes this year, how do you help lead your team?
Really just building their confidence. You know, we got a lot of young guys coming in to replace the seniors that we had last year on our defense, and just building their confidence and keeping them strong in their game and just like motivating them to do better is how I guess I lead them.
That's a great answer.
What is your biggest challenge as a coach?
Biggest challenge? Just that probably every day is a little bit different. I don't think that I can ever show up and, you know, John asked a really good question about what does Monday look like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in practice. Everything changes for us. You know, the biggest challenge is me being able to handle everything that's thrown at you. We've got so many different kids on our team. You know, we were 7 through 12 under one roof. You know, things show up in a day, and, you know, nobody's really privy to that information, but I spend the majority of my day probably having personal conversations. So the challenge of me is trying to find ways to help our kids. You know, sometimes it's some personal issues that they're going through. Sometimes it could be academic, social, emotional issues that they may be having. You know, so it's not a challenge. I think it's a blessing to have those opportunities to help them. And then for me is just the want to try to find something to help them. The greatest thing about football and having a larger staff of different men on our staff is that even if I didn't go through it personally, I probably have somebody on my staff that can relate to that kid that's experiencing that problem. We all have different backgrounds and what we've experienced. Some of us had great childhood, some of us had bad childhood. Some of us grew up with money, some of us didn't. Some of us grew up in a single-parent household, some of us grew up in a two-parent household. Relational issues. I mean, we got high school kids, you know, right now it's a big deal. Relationships and navigating those relationships, understanding how to handle stress and anxiety. And we're coming off a week where there's always in the news of social issues and, you know, I love it. You see a country that's divided at oftentimes in our country, whether it's politically, whether it's racial, whatever it may be. I'd invite them to come spend a day with a football team. That's why I love our team, and that's why I love the sport of football, and that's kind of been where I've always been. But, if you want to see a group of people that think differently, listen, we've got kids on our team. I promise you they have different political beliefs. I promise you they have. I have some really rich kids, I have some really poor kids. I have all kind of different backgrounds, and every day you see a group of kids that love each other and get along and do what they're supposed to do and work collectively. And I think if you could take that and apply it to our entire country, it would be great. So I'm just fortunate to have them in my life. They make me better every day too. So the biggest challenge is how to help them. I kind of crave that. I try to, it keeps me up at night, keeps our coaches up at night. We just want to try to be the people that they need at this point in time in their life so that we can teach them things that hopefully they return the favor down the road, that they're people that are helping their families and their communities.
Anything else?
So what was your inspiration to become a coach?
Just because, I was impacted so much by education and other coaches that I had when I was younger. We mentioned different situations that people had. I was in a single-parent household. I grew up with my dad. He was a really great dad, but we didn't have a lot. So I was very reliant on my coaches that became very influential in my life, from spiritual things to emotional things. I don't know if I've told this story, but I think about how coaches impacted my life. I was a kid that, one year I woke up and under the Christmas tree I had a hoodie. That was it. My dad had got me a hoodie. He was a really good dad, made me do the right things, but that's what I had. I went out to the carport and there was probably 20 gifts under my carport, and it was all from my coaches. They kind of knew that I didn't have anything. They had went and spent their money, and so they wanted me to have a good Christmas. So, things like that, I think if you're not impacted by, I don't know how you're not. So I was very fortunate in high school that I kind of realized how great this profession could be. I was a kid that wanted that help. I think that's the tough part sometimes as a coach. You feel like, how do you not see that, your life can be anything that you want it to be? But through some motivation that I knew I didn't want my life to be like what it was as a kid, to having coaches that were just so heavily involved, from phone calls. We didn't have, I was still paying for every text that you send. I know y'all probably don't know what language I'm sending, but I had to is this worth this text to send right here? I'm going to have to waste one of my 100 or however many months you had. But coaches that would just stop by, bring me supper, take me to ball games on the weekends, just try to pour and speak life into me. So just thankful that I had those people in my life and still do as mentors with a lot of surrounding schools around this area that they've gone and went to different schools. And hopefully that's what we're being for our kids that are here, no matter what their situation is.
Is there anything else you want to add that we haven't asked you guys?
Yeah, if you can make the trip this week, to Anderson, please come out and support us. It's our last non-region game. We're on a bye week next week, so if you're looking for some football, this is a good week to come. We really could use your support. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll be back at home at North Greenville, and there are 2 big region games. We'll have homecoming on October the 3rd against Union, and then senior night, October the 10th. It's just kind of when you start throwing those dates out, homecoming and senior night, you just realize how quickly the season is going by. It feels like we were just in here talking about ACA, a day ago. So if you can support them, please do. Continue to grow our school community, and you guys being there makes a huge impact for us and how well we play. And looking forward to having some home games soon that are a little bit closer of a drive for us, and hopefully keep going. I hope that I'm back in here telling you that we're 5-0 going into region play.